The air was thick with the scent of rain as the stray dog limped through the park, her fur matted and caked in dirt. She had been wandering for days, lost in the city's endless maze of concrete and shadows, searching for scraps, for warmth, for a place that might feel like home. But today was different. Today, her instincts pulled her toward the sound of something small and helpless, a cry, weak and trembling, carried on the wind. She stopped, sniffed the ground, and there it was, a tiny bird, lying in the grass, barely alive, its wing bent at an unnatural angle. Her heart, though scarred and hardened by years of neglect, beat faster as she moved toward it. She had no name, no family, but in that moment, something within her stirred. A tenderness she hadn't known she still had. With great care, she nudged the bird gently with her nose, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel alone. The park was a place of forgotten stories. Children once ran here, their laughter echoing through the trees, but now it felt like an abandoned sanctuary for the lost. The dog, though wary, knew these paths well. She had learned to move with quiet grace, keeping to the shadows, never asking for attention. But today, the park seemed different, heavier, as if the air itself was holding its breath. She saw the bird, its tiny body trembling in the grass, its eyes wide with terror. The dog hesitated, her instincts screaming to leave it behind, to keep moving. The world had never been kind to her, and kindness was a luxury she had long since forgotten. But as she crouched low to the ground, something shifted in her. She wasn't sure what it was. Fleeting memory, perhaps of a time when she'd been cared for, or a glimmer of empathy that flickered through her tired soul. She nuzzled the bird carefully, her breath warm against its frail body. The bird's tiny form shivered, but its eyes met hers, vulnerable, trusting, a bond formed in silence. The dog knew what it was like to be abandoned, to be left alone with no one to rely on. Her coat was thin and ragged, her ribs visible beneath her fur, a testament to the harshness of the streets. She had learned to survive, to fight for every scrap of food, every moment of peace. But this tiny creature, this bird barely alive, was a reminder of everything she had lost. It was a reminder that sometimes survival meant something more than just existing. For the next few hours, the dog stayed with the bird. She didn't know why. Maybe it was because she was tired of being alone. Maybe it was because she saw herself in the bird's fragile form. The rain began to fall in soft, rhythmic drops, soaking them both. The dog, without thinking, lay beside the bird, curling her body around it for warmth. The tiny creature nestled against her, its fragile heartbeat thumping in time with hers. It was an odd comfort, one she hadn't realized she needed. She watched the bird's small chest rise and fall, its breath shallow but steady. There was something almost human in the way it seemed to lean into her, as if it understood she was its protector. The dog didn't understand it herself. She had never been anyone's protector. But she had made a choice, an unspoken promise to keep the bird safe, even if it meant giving up a part of herself. Days passed. The dog carried the bird to a quiet alley, a hidden corner of the city where she could keep it safe. She scavenged for food, bringing back scraps for both of them, though she ate little herself. She didn't know what the bird needed, didn't know how to heal it, but she did what she could. She kept it warm, sheltered from the cold, and watched over it as if it were her own. The bird's condition fluctuated. Some days it seemed stronger, its wings twitching with small bursts of energy. Other days, it looked worse, its eyes dimming, the weakness creeping back in. The dog was scared, afraid that she wasn't enough to save it. She had never been enough to save herself, but still she didn't give up. She nuzzled the bird, nudging it gently, whispering soft sounds that only she understood, and every time the bird's small eyes opened and met hers, it felt like a small victory. It was a cold morning when the bird finally stretched its wings. Tentative at first, shaky, as though it wasn't sure if it could fly. The dog watched, her heart pounding in her chest. The bird fluttered its wings once, then again, gaining confidence with each movement. The dog's tail wagged slowly, a soft, cautious motion. She had no idea what the future held, but in that moment, she realized something. She wasn't just keeping the bird alive, she was helping it to live. For the first time in years, the dog felt something other than hunger and fear. She felt a connection. She felt needed, important. The bird wasn't the only one healing. The dog, too, was finding pieces of herself she had long forgotten. She remembered what it was like to care, to give without expecting anything in return. She had never known love, not like this, but in her quiet way, she was learning to give it. The day came when the bird finally took flight. It was a slow ascent, the bird wobbling in the air, its small wings fluttering against the wind. The dog watched in awe, her heart swelling with pride. She had done it. She had helped this little creature survive, and now it was free. The bird soared higher and higher, disappearing into the sky, leaving behind a trail of hope in its wake. The dog stood there, watching the bird fly away, a soft, bittersweet ache filling her chest. She had never expected to be a hero. She had never expected anyone to need her. But in that fleeting moment, she understood something deeper. Love wasn't about saving the world. It was about saving what you could, even if it was just one small, fragile creature. And that was enough. As the bird disappeared into the horizon, the dog turned away, her steps slow but steady. The world was still harsh, still unforgiving, but she was different now. She had something more than survival. She had a heart that could heal, a soul that could love. And in that simple truth, she found the strength to keep moving forward. The rain stopped, and for the first time in a long time, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a soft, golden light over the park. The dog looked up at the sky, her tail wagging faintly. In that quiet moment, she was no longer alone. Weeks passed, but the dog found herself returning to the same spot every day, the alley where she had first found the bird. There, in the warmth of the sun, the breeze that always carried the scent of damp earth and fresh rain, she would wait. The city's constant hum never quite drowned out the soft memories of the bird's fluttering wings or the moments of shared silence between them. She had always been a loner, had never known what it felt like to have someone depend on her, let alone to be trusted. But something in her had shifted when she had first curled around the fragile body of bird, when she had felt its little heart race against hers, when she had seen its eyes open to the world again, even after it had almost given up. She hadn't just kept it alive. She had learned how to live, too. The dog began to notice a few more changes in herself. Her body had begun to feel less heavy, though her bones still ached. Her eyes had begun to carry a softness that had been absent for years. She no longer scavenged for every morsel of food she could find. No, now she found herself leaving scraps behind for others as though she wanted to pass on the kindness she had found in herself. Perhaps it wasn't the same kindness that the bird had shown her, but it was hers, authentic, raw, and strangely beautiful. One day, as she wandered through the park, she saw something that caught her attention, a small family, a mother and a father, sitting on the grass with their young child. The child laughed as the parents clapped their hands and cheered. The dog watched them, her gaze lingering a little longer than it usually did. The laughter of the family reminded her of something she couldn't quite put into words. It was the laughter she had once heard in the parks, back when she was a puppy, before the streets had claimed her innocence, back when there had been a promise of warmth and safety. She walked toward them slowly, her paws tapping lightly against the ground. They didn't notice her at first, but when she drew closer, the child looked up and smiled. The smile was innocent and pure, like the bird's eyes had been that first day when it trusted her. The mother noticed, too, her eyes narrowing for a brief moment, unsure of this stray dog that approached them. But then she softened, her expression changing as she watched the dog sit a few feet away, her eyes gentle and unthreatening. The dog lay down, not quite approaching them, but not backing away either. She felt the warmth of the family, their calm presence. She didn't need anything from them. No food, no affection, nothing. But their warmth, their simple contentment, felt like something she had been missing for so long. They were family. Not in the sense of blood or names, but in the way they existed together, in the shared space between them that felt effortless and full of peace. As the family packed up to leave, the little girl waved at the dog. "Goodbye, puppy," she said, her voice light and full of innocence. The dog watched them go, her eyes tracking their every movement as they disappeared into the distance. She remained there, sitting in the patch of sun, feeling a quiet peace settle over her. The bird's wings may have taken it far from her, but the lessons it had taught her lingered, and somehow they had begun to shape her world in ways she had never expected. She understood now. Love, care, survival. They were not separate, not isolated. They were all part of the same thing. Life, in all its rawness and beauty, was about finding connection where you could, holding on to it when you found it, and then letting go when it was time. The seasons began to change. The crisp autumn air swept through the city, carrying with it the scent of fallen leaves and fresh beginnings. The dog had found a new rhythm to her days. She had discovered places where she could sleep comfortably, hidden from the harshness of the world, and places where she could roam freely without the constant need to protect herself. She had stopped looking for scraps, stopped feeling that gnawing hunger that always haunted her. In its place, something deeper had blossomed. She had learned to nourish herself, not just physically, but emotionally. One morning, as she wandered into the park, she noticed something familiar in the distance. It was a flicker of movement, something small, delicate. Her heart skipped a beat. It couldn't be. And yet, as she drew closer, she saw it, there perched on a branch of the nearby tree, the bird. It was grown now, its feathers sleek and full, its wings strong and vibrant. The dog stopped, her breath catching in her throat. The bird looked down at her, its eyes locking with hers, and for a moment, the world seemed to fall away. Without thinking, the dog walked toward the tree, her tail wagging softly. The bird fluttered down to the ground, hopping closer to her. The dog stopped, kneeling as if she were waiting for something, waiting for a sign. The bird, as if sensing her hesitation, walked up to her, its tiny feet padding softly against the earth. In that quiet moment, the dog understood. She wasn't meant to keep the bird with her forever. Its wings had grown strong, its body whole again. It was time for it to fly, to live on its own. The bird chirped softly, a sound of gratitude, of acknowledgement. The dog closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wind brush against her fur. When she opened them again, the bird had already taken flight, its wings slicing through the sky like a streak of light. She watched it disappear into the distance, her heart heavy but full. The bird was free, and in a way so was she. The dog turned away, her paws light on the earth as she stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The sun shone down on her, warming her skin, and for the first time in a long time, she felt the weight of her journey lift. The world was still harsh, still unforgiving, but now it didn't feel so lonely. The bird had flown free, and so had she. And perhaps, in time, she would find a place where she, too, could spread her wings and soar. The city had always felt vast, cold, and endless, a place where time blurred together like the muddy rivers of the streets, where lives intersected only briefly before splintering away again. But now, for the first time, the dog felt something different. It was as though the weight of all the years of wandering had been lifted, leaving her with a strange sense of peace. She wasn't sure what had changed, whether it was the bird's flight, the love she had learned to give, or simply the passage of time. But something inside her had softened. She no longer felt the constant pressure to fight for survival, to stay hidden, to avoid being seen. She moved through the city with a sense of quiet purpose now, her steps deliberate, her movements confident. She wasn't searching for scraps anymore. She wasn't searching for anything. The warmth of the sun on her fur, the gentle rustle of the leaves in the trees, the way the wind felt as it tugged at her ears, these things felt like enough now. Her heart wasn't heavy anymore. It was lighter, and though she still carried the scars of the past, she no longer felt the weight of them pressing down on her every day. One afternoon, as she wandered down a familiar street, she caught sight of something she hadn't expected, a small family sitting in a cafe. They were laughing, the sound of their voices bright and warm in the crisp air. There was something about them that caught her attention, something that felt familiar. They were sitting on the outdoor patio, the mother gently stroking the head of a dog at her feet, a dog that was much like her, scrofy, tired, a little worn, but with eyes full of hope. The dog stopped in her tracks, watching them for a moment, her tail twitching. The family hadn't seen her yet. The mother was looking at the dog, her gaze warm and kind. The dog stepped closer, unsure of what she was doing, but something inside her told her to move forward, to take a step she had never taken before. When the mother looked up and saw her, there was no hesitation in her eyes. She smiled softly, as though she had been waiting for the dog to come. "Hey there," she said gently. "Are you hungry?" The dog paused, her body tensing slightly. She hadn't asked for food. She hadn't asked for anything. But there was something in the way the woman spoke, so tender, so accepting, that made her feel safe, made her feel as though it was okay to just be. The dog took a few steps forward, and the woman reached down, offering her a hand. Slowly, the dog approached and sniffed her fingers. The warmth from the woman's touch spread through her, filling a space in her that had been empty for so long. "You're welcome here," the woman said softly, her voice a whisper that seemed to reach right into the dog's heart. The dog sat down on the patio, the breeze ruffling her fur. She wasn't sure if this was where she belonged, but it felt right. The family continued their meal, the little dog at their feet wagging its tail, and the dog felt something she hadn't known in years: comfort. It was a simple thing, really, but it was enough. The weeks that followed were a gentle unfolding of new routines. The dog, now known as Bella, found a place in the family's home. At first, she had stayed outside, reluctant to cross the threshold, unsure of what it meant to belong. But the family's patience, their soft words and kind gestures, slowly coaxed her inside. They never forced her, never demanded more than she could give. Bella was learning to trust again. She watched as the children, full of energy and laughter, ran around the yard, their voices rising in a chorus of joy. And every time one of them would stop to pat her head, she would feel the warmth spread from their touch like rays of sunshine reaching deep into her soul. She began to follow them, to sit with them as they played, to curl up next to them when they rested. And when they slept, she would lie by their beds, her head resting on her paws, listening to the steady rhythm of their breathing. It wasn't perfect. There were still days when the memories of the past threatened to overwhelm her. Moments when she would retreat to the corner of the yard, when the weight of loneliness would press against her chest like a stone. But in those moments, she found comfort in the presence of her new family. They didn't expect her to be perfect. They didn't ask her to forget. They only asked that she be there with them as she was. And little by little, Bella began to understand what it meant to belong. One evening, as the sun began to set and the sky shifted from gold to purple, Bella stood at the edge of the yard, her eyes gazing out at the horizon. She could feel the coolness of the evening air brushing against her fur, and in that quiet moment, she let her gaze soften. The bird's flight had been a turning point in her life, a moment when she had realized that sometimes letting go was the greatest act of love. And as she stood there, watching the fading light, she understood something else too. She wasn't just a stray dog anymore. She wasn't just the creature who had wandered through life, always on the outside looking in. She was Bella. She was a part of this family, a part of something bigger than herself. She had a place here, a purpose. As the night grew darker, the family gathered inside, the sound of laughter spilling from the open door. Bella turned and padded slowly toward the warmth of the house, her tail wagging lightly. She didn't rush. She didn't need to. She was home. The door closed behind her with a soft click, and for the first time in a long time, Bella felt the weight of the world lift off her shoulders. The past, with its darkness and pain, no longer defined her. She had found a place where she could rest, where she could grow, and where she could love. And with that simple truth, Bella lay down on the rug by the fireplace, her eyes fluttering closed as the warmth wrapped around her. The world was still out there, full of unknowns and challenges. But here, in this small, quiet corner of it, she had found peace. The bird had flown free. And now, so had she. Time continued to pass, as it always does. Bella's days in her new home became a collection of small, quiet moments. A slow, steady rhythm that, over time, had come to feel like the melody of a life lived in harmony. She had once been the stray who had fought for every breath, every scrap of food, but now she was the companion, always near, always steady, a silent presence in the family's lives. The children had grown used to her gentle nature, no longer hesitant when they reached out to pet her. They knew her now, knew the way her eyes softened when they spoke to her, the way she would tilt her head slightly when they asked her a question, as though she were listening, really listening. She had learned their rhythms, their laughter, their fears, and in turn, they had learned to respect her quiet strength. They had seen how she could protect them, how she would sit by their side when they were sick or sad, her body still and unwavering. And in those moments, there was no need for words. Her presence alone was enough. Yet, despite all the warmth she had come to know, there was always a small part of Bella that remained distant, that held on the quiet shadows of her past. She hadn't forgotten the streets, the hunger, the days spent wandering alone. Sometimes, in the stillness of the house, she would close her eyes and remember the cold, the empty nights, the gnawing emptiness of being unloved and unwanted. And in those moments, she would retreat into herself, finding comfort in the quiet corners of the house. But the family didn't push her. They didn't rush her healing. They allowed her to take her time, to come to them on her own terms. It was this patience, this unspoken understanding, that deepened their bond. They gave her space, not because they thought she needed it, but because they trusted her to come to them when she was ready. It was on one such evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon and the air grew crisp with the chill of approaching winter, that Bella realized just how far she had come. She stood in the yard, her eyes on the sky, watching the first stars appear, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she felt complete. The bird, too, had long since flown away, its wings taking it to places Bella would never go. But that didn't matter anymore. She had learned that sometimes the most beautiful part of life is letting go, of memories, of past hurts, of the things that once kept us tethered to pain. And in that release, there was room for something new, something beautiful. Bella had found that space in her heart, and for the first time, it wasn't filled with longing or emptiness. It was full of love, quiet but steady, like the soft light of the stars above. One morning, when the sky was a pale blue and the air smelled of fresh rain, Bella found herself at the park again. The trees were still bare, their branches stretching toward the sky like arms reaching for something just out of reach. The park was quiet, empty except for the soft rustling of leaves and the occasional chirp of a bird in the distance. It was here that Bella had first found the bird, the tiny creature that had changed everything for her. She stood at the same spot where they had met, her paws sinking into the damp grass. For a moment she closed her eyes, letting the memories of that day wash over her. The trembling little bird, its fragile body lying in the grass, the warmth of its tiny form against hers, the feeling of protection that had come so unexpectedly. But now, as Bella stood there, she realized something else. The bird had flown, just as she had, out into the world, free to live its life. And so had she. She had let go of the fear, the loneliness, the uncertainty that had once defined her. She had found her place in the world, just as the bird had found its place in the sky. The sound of footsteps behind her broke her reverie, and she turned to see the family walking toward her. The little girl, the one who had once waved at her so innocently, was holding a bouquet of wildflowers in her hands. Her face lit up when she saw Bella, and she ran toward her, the bouquet held out as a gift. "Look, Bella," she said, her voice full of excitement. "I picked these just for you." Bella bent down, sniffing the flowers as the girl gently laid them at her feet. There was no hesitation now, no lingering fear. Bella wagged her tail and nudged the girl's hand with her nose, a soft, unspoken acknowledgement of the bond they shared. The mother smiled softly from behind, her gaze full of quiet pride. She knew. She knew how far Bella had come, how much she had healed, and how deeply she had become a part of their family. Bella didn't need words. She didn't need to prove anything. She had found her place in the world, not in grand gestures or sweeping moments of victory, but in the quiet, tender moments where love was given freely, without condition. As the family continued their walk, Bella followed behind them, her steps light, her heart full. The journey that had begun with a dying bird, a stray dog lost in the world, had brought her here, to a family that saw her not as broken or lost, but as a creature worthy of love, worthy of belonging. And as she walked beside them, her eyes turned once more to the sky. The bird was gone, but it had shown her the way to freedom, to healing, to love. And Bella had found her wings, too. As the seasons continued their quiet march, Bella's life unfolded in ways she had never imagined possible. The family had become more than just a shelter. They had become her world. The laughter of the children, the warmth of the mother's embrace, the steady presence of the father, each had stitched a patch into the quilt of her heart, making her whole again. She was no longer the stray dog she had been, the dog who had once walked the streets in search of food, shelter, and survival. She was Bella, loved, cared for, and needed. But even in the security of her new life, there were still moments of quiet reflection, moments when Bella found herself alone with her thoughts, standing on the edge of the yard, staring into the distance as the world hummed around her. The wind would brush her fur, and the sky would stretch wide above her, as though calling her to remember. The past was always there, lingering like a shadow at the edges of her mind. Never fully gone, never forgotten. She had come so far. She had survived the streets, the loneliness, the cold. She had faced abandonment and hunger, had lived in the shadows of the world. But now she had found the light, the simple, quiet joy of waking up to a soft voice calling her name, of curling up at the foot of a bed, of watching the children play without fear or hesitation. One particular evening, as the sun began to sink behind the horizon, casting the sky in shades of amber and pink, Bella found herself in the backyard alone. The house was quiet, the family inside, but there was something different in the air tonight. The breeze was soft, and the sky stretched wide, filled with the promise of something just beyond reach. Bella stood still, her eyes lifting to the heavens, watching the stars begin to twinkle faintly in the distance. For a long time, she had carried the weight of the world on her shoulders, never knowing what it meant to let go. The fear of being abandoned again, the pain of being alone, had shaped every step she took. But now, as she stood there, watching the stars blink into existence, she realized something profound. She was free. She had found her place in the world, her purpose. She had become part of a family, and in doing so, she had found herself. The bird, the one who had first stirred her heart, had long since flown into the skies, just as it was meant to. Bella had learned that letting go was not about losing something. It was about creating space for something new. The bird had found its freedom, and Bella, too, had found her own. As she stood there in the cool evening air, her paws sinking into the soft grass, Bella closed her eyes. The sound of the children's laughter floated through the open window, and she felt a soft smile tug at the corners of her lips. In that moment, she knew she didn't need to search anymore. She had everything she needed right here, in the quiet hum of life that surrounded her. She had been lost, but now she was found. She had been broken, but now she was whole, and she was loved, not because she had done something extraordinary, but simply because she was enough. Bella turned and padded slowly back toward the house. The door opened, and the family called her inside. Without hesitation, she stepped over the threshold, feeling the warmth of the home embrace her once again. The world outside, with all its chaos and uncertainty, was left behind. Here, in this small, quiet corner of the universe, Bella had found peace. And for the first time in her life, she knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. The house was filled with laughter, the clinking of plates, and the soft hum of life moving forward. And in that stillness, in the quiet moments of belonging, Bella found her heart at rest. She had no more questions, no more doubts. She had learned, through love and loss, that life was about the simple things, the everyday moments that made up the bigger picture. The sky outside darkened as the stars shone brighter. And Bella, with her head resting on her paws, closed her eyes and drifted into sleep, knowing that no matter where the world took her, she would always be home. In the warmth of the house, in the arms of the family who had chosen her, Bella had found something she had never known before, a place to belong. And in that belonging, she found a power greater than any she had ever known, the power of love, of trust, and the quiet strength to carry on. The bird had flown, and Bella had learned to fly too. And in that flight, she had discovered the truest freedom of all, the freedom to be loved,